The emergency beacon had been flashing for 3 standard cycles when Ambassador Kira Chen finally arrived at the Galactic Federation headquarters. The massive crystalline structure that housed the governing body of 12,000 sentient species seemed different somehow. The usual calm that filled its halls had been replaced by something she had never felt here before: fear. Kira walked through the main corridor and noticed how the other ambassadors looked at her. Some turned away. Others stared with expressions she could not read. A Vorlaxian delegate, its purple tentacles wrapped tight around its own body in what she knew was a sign of deep distress, actually moved out of her path and lowered its eye stalks in what seemed like respect. That was strange. The Vorlaxians had never shown humans any special consideration before. Ambassador Chen, a voice called from behind her. She turned to find Senior Counselor Thrix approaching. The insectoid being from the Mantari system was usually a picture of composed authority. Today, his compound eyes seemed to flicker with barely controlled panic. "Thank the stars you have arrived. The Council requests your immediate presence." "What is happening?" Kira asked as she followed him. "I received the emergency summons but no details." Thrix's mandibles clicked nervously. "It is best if the full council explains. I do not have the words for what we face." The council chamber was the largest room in the headquarters. It could hold representatives from every member species if needed. Today, it held the Supreme Council, 27 beings who governed the Federation. All 27 seats were filled, which had not happened in over 200 years. Kira was led to the center of the chamber. She stood alone on the speaking platform, surrounded by the elevated seats of the most powerful beings in known space. Every eye, sensor, and perception organ was focused on her. Supreme Chancellor Vorn, an ancient being whose species had founded the Federation nearly 8,000 years ago, spoke first. His voice was like wind through crystal, beautiful but today filled with sorrow. "Ambassador Chen, humanity has been a member of the Galactic Federation for only 47 of your years. In that time, your species has been difficult, aggressive, chaotic. Many on this council have questioned whether humans should have been admitted at all." Kira felt her jaw tighten but said nothing. This was not news. Humanity's membership in the Federation had always been controversial. "But today," Vorn continued, "we set aside all past grievances. Today we come to you not as rulers, not as elder species, not as those who have guided the galaxy for millennia." He paused, and Kira saw something she never expected to see in his ancient eyes: desperation. "Today we come to you for help." A holographic display activated in the center of the chamber. It showed a section of space, the outer edge of the galaxy. A darkness was spreading there, consuming stars. "We call it the Absence," Vorn said. "It appeared 40 cycles ago at the very edge of known space. At first, we thought it was simply a region of cosmic dust blocking our sensors. We were wrong." The display zoomed in. Kira saw what looked like a wave of pure nothing moving through space. Wherever it passed, stars went dark, planets vanished. Even the basic structure of space itself seemed to fold inward and disappear. "It is not matter," another counselor spoke up. This was Specialist Yenix, the Federation's chief scientific advisor. "It is not energy. It is not antimatter or dark matter or any phenomenon we have ever encountered. Our best minds have studied it for 40 cycles, and we can tell you only what it is not. As for what it is," she trailed off, her normally confident voice failing her. "It is the end of everything," Vorn said simply. "It consumes all it touches. It cannot be stopped. It cannot be studied. Ships that approach it do not return. Signals sent into it do not echo back. It simply is not, and everything it touches becomes not as well." Kira stared at the display. The scale was hard to comprehend. Entire star systems were disappearing into that spreading darkness. "How fast is it moving?" she asked. "Its speed is increasing," Yenix said. At current acceleration, it will reach the core systems of the Federation in approximately 300 standard cycles. Every inhabited world, every species, every civilization we have ever built. She paused. Gone. Silence filled the chamber. Kira understood now why she had been summoned, though she could not understand why. The Federation has existed for 8,000 years, Vorn said. We have faced wars, plagues, disasters of every kind. We have always survived through cooperation, through careful planning, through the accumulated wisdom of species far older than yours. But this, he gestured at the spreading darkness, this is beyond us. We do not know what to do. And you think humans do? Kira asked. No, Vorn admitted, but we think humans might be able to figure it out. He leaned forward in his seat. Ambassador Chen, in 47 years of Federation membership, humanity has been involved in more incidents, conflicts, and crises than any other species in recorded history. You have started wars over resources. You have ended wars through methods we found distasteful but effective. You have broken every protocol, ignored every tradition, and violated countless regulations. I am aware of our record, Kira said carefully. What you may not be aware of, Vorn continued, is how many times your chaotic approach has solved problems that our careful methods could not. The Xenox plague outbreak. Human doctors found a cure in 3 days by testing methods we had rejected as too dangerous. The Krell Rebellion. Human diplomats ended it by proposing a solution so unorthodox that neither side could refuse without looking foolish. The Void Creature Incursion. A human captain killed it by ramming her ship into its mouth and detonating her engines. Captain Martinez is still considered a hero on Earth, Kira said. She is considered insane by every species in the Federation, Vorn replied, and yet she succeeded where our most careful strategies had failed. He spread his ancient hands. Ambassador Chen, the Galactic Federation is facing extinction. Our scientists have no answers. Our military has no weapons. Our philosophers have no wisdom that applies. We have spent 8,000 years building a civilization based on caution, planning, and careful consideration of every option. And now you need crazy, Kira said. Now we need human, Vorn corrected. The Council has voted. It was unanimous, Ambassador. We are formally requesting that humanity assume leadership of the Federation during this existential crisis. We are asking your species to do what it does best. Kira stared at him. And what exactly do you think that is? Vorn's ancient face shifted into what might have been a smile. Survive, no matter what it takes, no matter what rules must be broken, no matter what costs must be paid. Of all the species in the galaxy, humans are the only ones who seem to have an instinct for survival that overrides all other considerations. We have called it recklessness. We have called it barbarism. Today, we call it hope. Kira took a deep breath. The weight of what was being asked was almost too much to process. Humanity leading the galaxy. Humanity responsible for saving every species in known space. It was absurd. And yet, looking at the spreading darkness on the display, she could not think of a single reason to refuse. I will need to contact Earth, she said finally. This decision is not mine to make alone. Of course, Vorn said, but Ambassador, please understand. We have approximately 300 cycles before extinction. By Federation standards, that is no time at all. By human standards, he paused. I believe you would say we need to move quickly. Kira nodded. She had already begun composing the message in her mind. The President, the Secretary General of the United Nations, the Joint Chiefs, every government on Earth would need to be involved. But more than that, she knew she needed to contact someone else first, someone who would understand what was really being asked. She needed to call her father, General Marcus Chen, retired, the man who had saved Earth during the First Contact War by doing something so reckless that the Federation still used it as an example of why humans could not be trusted. If anyone knew how to face the impossible, it was him. General Marcus Chen had been growing tomatoes when the message arrived. He was 73 years old, and he had spent the last 15 years on his small farm in Montana, as far from military matters as he could get. His hands were in the soil when his personal communication device began to flash with the priority signal he had not seen since retiring. He did not hurry. Whatever crisis had found him could wait another minute while he finished planting the seedlings. When he finally stood and cleaned his hands, he walked slowly to his cabin and sat down before activating the display. His daughter's face appeared, and he knew immediately that this was not a social call. "Hi, Dad," Kira said. "Trouble?" he asked. "The galaxy ending kind." Marcus nodded slowly. He had always known, somewhere deep in his gut, that retirement would not last forever. The universe had a way of finding people who knew how to fight. "Tell me," he said. She told him everything: the absence, the council's vote, the request for human leadership. As she spoke, Marcus felt something stirring in his chest that he had not felt in years. Not fear exactly. Something closer to the feeling he got when facing a problem that seemed impossible. "Interest." 300 cycles, he said when she finished. "That is about 250 Earth years at the Federation's conversion rate. That is actually quite a lot of time." "The Council does not think so," Kira said. "The Council has never fought a war against something they could not understand," Marcus replied. "They have never had to. They have had 8,000 years of building systems and protocols for every situation. This is the first time in their history that they have faced something truly unknown." He paused. "But humanity has faced the unknown since we came down from the trees. It is what we do." "So you will help?" Marcus looked out the window of his cabin at the mountains in the distance. He had come here to find peace, to escape the weight of command, to forget the things he had done to keep humanity alive. "I will do more than help," he said. "Send me everything you have on this absence. Every scan, every report, every theory your Federation scientists have considered and rejected. And Kira." "Yes." "Start making arrangements. I am coming to Federation headquarters. If humanity is going to lead this response, we are going to do it the human way." "Which is?" Marcus smiled, and it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who had spent 40 years fighting wars that everyone said could not be won. "First, we understand the enemy, then we find its weakness, and then we hit it with everything we have until it stops moving." He paused. "The Federation has been studying this thing for 40 cycles and learned nothing. That means they have been studying it wrong. It is time for a different approach." 2 weeks later, Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of the Federation headquarters, staring at a holographic display of the absence. Around him were gathered the greatest scientific minds of 12,000 species. They watched him with expressions ranging from hope to skepticism to outright contempt. "General Chen," Specialist Yenix said, "we have already told you everything we know. Our sensors cannot penetrate the phenomenon. Our probes do not return. Our theoretical models predict nothing but continued expansion until all matter in the galaxy is consumed." "You have told me what your sensors show," Marcus agreed. "But you have not told me what your sensors do not show." "I do not understand." Marcus turned to face the assembled scientists. "In human history, we have a saying: when you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. You have spent 40 cycles trying to understand what this thing is, but you have never asked the more important question." "Which is?" Yenix asked. "What does it want?" Silence filled the observation deck. Finally, a Vorlaxian scientist spoke up, its tentacles waving in agitation. "Want? It is a cosmic phenomenon. It does not want anything. It simply is." "Is it?" Marcus asked. "Show me the expansion pattern again." The display changed, showing the spread of the absence over the past 40 cycles. Stars disappeared in sequence. the darkness growing like a stain spreading across the fabric of space. "Look at the pattern," Marcus said. "Really look at it. Does that look random to you?" The scientist studied the display. Slowly, expressions began to change. "It is selecting," Yenix said slowly. "The expansion is not uniform. It is targeting specific systems first." "Which systems?" Marcus asked. "More calculations, more analysis." Finally, Yenix looked up with compound eyes wide with shock. "Systems with life," she said. "It is specifically consuming systems with life before moving to dead systems. The probability of this pattern occurring by random chance is impossible," Marcus finished. "Which means this thing, whatever it is not just a cosmic phenomenon. It is hunting." The implications rippled through the assembled scientists. A cosmic predator, something that actively sought out and consumed life. "But why?" someone asked. "What could possibly feed on entire star systems?" Marcus shook his head. "Wrong question. The question is not why, the question is how do we make it stop?" He turned back to the display. "And I have an idea, but you are not going to like it." "What is your idea?" Supreme Chancellor Vorn asked. He had been watching silently from the back of the observation deck. Marcus pointed at the display. "We have been treating this thing like a natural disaster, something to be endured or escaped, but if it is hunting, then it can be hunted back." He paused. "I want to send a ship into the absence, not to study it, not to observe it, to attack it." The reaction was immediate and violent. Scientists shouted objections in a dozen languages. Military advisors called it suicide. Even Kira, who had been standing quietly beside her father, looked shocked. "General Chen," Vorn said when the noise finally died down, "we have sent dozens of ships toward the absence. None have returned. What makes you think an attack would succeed where reconnaissance has failed?" "Because reconnaissance was never going to work," Marcus said. "You sent ships to observe and retreat. They were cautious. They were careful. They did exactly what your Federation has always done." He shook his head. "But this thing, whatever it is, seems to respond to life, to consciousness, maybe even to intent. Your careful, observing ships were passive. They did not register as a threat. And an attacking ship would." "It might," Marcus said. "At the very least, an aggressive approach might provoke a response we can actually study. Right now, we are learning nothing because we are not willing to take risks. I say we start taking risks." Vorn was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well, General. You have authorization to attempt your aggressive approach, but I must ask, who will command this mission? No Federation officer will volunteer for what is essentially a suicide run." Marcus smiled that cold, hard smile again. "That is the thing about humans, Chancellor. We do not need to ask for volunteers. We have people who actually want to do this." He looked at his daughter. "Kira, get me a line to Earth. I need to talk to the Joint Chiefs. We are going to need the craziest pilots we have." Kira nodded, but her expression was worried. "Dad, you are not thinking of going yourself, are you?" "No," Marcus said. "I am too old for that kind of foolishness, but I know someone who is not." He paused. "Your brother's still flying experimental ships for the Navy." Kira's face went pale. "Michael, Dad, you cannot send Michael on a suicide mission." "I am not sending him anywhere. I am going to tell him what we are facing and what we need, and then I am going to let him decide." Marcus's expression softened slightly. "Kira, if there is one thing I know about your brother, it is that he would never forgive us if we faced the end of the galaxy without giving him a chance to help." He was right, and they both knew it. Michael Chen was exactly like his father, reckless, stubborn, and absolutely unwilling to accept that any problem was truly unsolvable. If anyone could fly a ship into the heart of cosmic darkness and come back with answers, it was him. Commander Michael Chen had just landed his experimental fighter when the message came through. He was still in the cockpit, running post-flight checks, when his communication panel lit up with a priority code. he did not recognize. He opened the channel and found himself looking at his father's face for the first time in 2 years. "Dad." "Michael, I need you." 3 words, that was all it took. Michael did not ask for details. He did not demand explanations. He simply nodded. "Where?" "Federation headquarters. I am sending coordinates. Get here as fast as you can." "On my way." He signed off and began the process of requisitioning a faster ship. Whatever was happening, if his father was asking for help, it was serious. General Marcus Chen had never asked anyone for anything in his life. 12 hours later, Michael was standing beside his father and sister in a private briefing room at Federation headquarters. He had listened to the entire explanation without interruption, his expression growing more focused with each new piece of information. "So let me make sure I understand," he said finally. "You want me to fly into a cosmic entity that eats stars, try to make it angry, and hope it responds in a way that gives us useful information?" "Yes," Marcus said. "And the ship?" "Federation has agreed to let us modify one of their fastest scouts with human weapon systems. Nothing too heavy. We are not trying to destroy this thing, just provoke it." Michael nodded slowly. A smile was spreading across his face. It was the same smile his father had worn when proposing the plan. "When do I leave?" Kira stepped forward. "Michael, you cannot just agree to this. This is not like your test flights. There is no ejection protocol, no rescue team, no second chances. If you go in there and something goes wrong." "Then I die," Michael finished. "Yeah, I figured that part out, Kira, but here is the thing." He gestured at the holographic display showing the absence. "If we do nothing, everyone dies anyway. Every person on Earth, every species in the Federation, every kid who will never be born because the universe got eaten by whatever that thing is." He shook his head. "I'm not the kind of guy who can just sit around waiting for extinction. Never have been." "None of us are," Marcus said quietly. "That is why we are Chens." 3 days later, Michael sat in the cockpit of the modified scout ship, which he had christened the Wasp. He was at the edge of the absence, closer than any Federation ship had come in 20 cycles. The darkness filled his view screen, a wall of nothing that seemed to stretch forever in every direction. "Mission Control, this is Wasp. I am in position, beginning approach." His father's voice came through the comm. "Wasp, we have you on sensors. All systems look good. Remember, we need data more than heroics. If you can get a reaction without getting destroyed, that is a win." "Understood, Control. Going in now." Michael pushed the throttle forward. The Wasp leaped toward the darkness. At first, nothing happened. He flew closer and closer to the boundary of the absence, watching his instruments for any sign of change. The sensors showed the same thing the Federation had reported: energy dissipation, gravity fluctuations, a complete breakdown of normal physical laws. And then at the moment of contact, something changed. Michael's entire body went rigid as something touched his mind. It was not a thought, not a voice, not anything he could have described in human language. It was a presence, vast and ancient and utterly alien. And it was curious. For a fraction of a second that felt like eternity, Michael Chen was in contact with the thing the Federation called the absence. He felt its age, countless billions of years. He felt its hunger, a need that went beyond anything biological. And he felt its intelligence, a mind so different from human consciousness that the mere contact should have shattered his sanity. But Michael Chen was not the kind of man who shattered easily. Instead of retreating into the safety of his own mind, he pushed back. He met that alien presence with everything he was. His fear, yes, but also his determination, his love for his family, his refusal to accept defeat, every stubborn, reckless, impossibly human quality that had made his species the chaos agents of the galaxy. The presence recoiled. And in that moment of recoil, Michael saw something. Not with his eyes, not with his instruments, but with a part of his mind he had not known existed. He saw the truth of the absence. It was not a predator. It was not a cosmic phenomenon. It was a survivor. The last survivor of a universe that had died before this one was born. Michael screamed as the contact broke. His ship was tumbling away from the boundary of the absence, thrown clear by some force he did not understand. Alarms were blaring. Systems were failing. His nose was bleeding and his vision was blurred. But he was alive, and he had what they needed. "Control," he gasped into the comm. "I made contact, direct mental contact. I know what it is. I know why it is here." His father's voice was sharp with concern. "Michael, are you hurt?" "I will live. Listen to me, Dad. This thing, this absence, it is not trying to destroy us. It is trying to survive. It is the last remnant of an older universe, and it has been drifting through the void between realities for longer than our universe has existed. It is feeding on matter and energy because it is starving. It does not want to kill us any more than we want to kill the animals we eat." Silence on the comm. Then his father spoke again, his voice thoughtful. "So it is not evil, just hungry." "Yes, and Dad," Michael coughed, tasting blood. "When I pushed back, when I made contact, it felt something from me, something it had not felt in billions of years." "What?" "Life, not just matter to consume, but actual conscious life. And for just a moment I think it was lonely." Marcus Chen stood in the observation deck, staring at the display of the absence with new eyes. Around him, the Supreme Council and the greatest minds of the Federation waited in silence. "It is alive," he said finally, "and it is alone, and it has been alone since before our universe began." "How does this help us?" Chancellor Vorn asked. "Even if we understand its nature, we cannot negotiate with something that requires our destruction to survive. Can we?" Marcus turned to face him. "Maybe we cannot negotiate, but maybe we can offer it something else." He looked at the display again. "This thing contacted my son's mind. It was curious about him, about what he was. For the first time in billions of years, it encountered something that was not just food." "What are you suggesting?" Specialist Yenix asked. "I am suggesting," Marcus said slowly, "that we do not fight this thing. We do not run from it. We give it what it really needs." "Which is?" Marcus smiled, and this time there was no coldness in it, only hope. "Company." The plan took 3 months to develop and another 3 to implement. During that time, the absence continued to expand, consuming stars and planets at an ever-increasing rate. Billions of beings died as their worlds were swallowed by the darkness. But humanity worked without rest. The basic concept was simple, though the execution was incredibly complex. If the absence was a survivor from a dead universe, lonely beyond comprehension, then perhaps it could be satisfied by something other than consuming matter. Perhaps it could be satisfied by connection. The Federation's greatest psychic species were recruited, the Mindweavers of Altax, the Dreamers of the Void, the ancient communicants who had spent millennia learning to project thoughts across space. They were brought together in a single location, a station built at the edge of the absence. And with them came humans. Not psychics, because humans had never developed strong psychic abilities, but something else. The people who had shaped humanity's destiny since the species first looked up at the stars. Storytellers. Writers, musicians, artists, poets. Every form of creative expression that humanity had ever developed was represented on that station. Their job was simple and impossible. They were going to tell the absence a story. The first attempt was a failure. The combined mental force of 1,000 psychics reached out toward the absence, carrying with them a symphony composed by Earth's greatest musicians. The absence consumed the energy without response. The second attempt was equally unsuccessful. A story, told in the combined voices of 100 cultures, broadcast directly into the cosmic entity's mind. It was met with the same hunger, the same consumption, the same nothing. Marcus Chen watched the failures from the observation deck of the station. Beside him, his son Michael, still recovering from his injuries, studied the readings from each attempt. "It is not working," Michael said. "The psychics are projecting, but the absence is not listening. It is just eating what we send." "Because we are still treating it like a receiver," Marcus said. "We are broadcasting at it, not talking with it." "What is the difference?" "The difference is that a broadcast is one way. A conversation requires two participants." Marcus paused, thinking. "Michael, when you made contact with the thing, you did not just send. You also received. You felt what it was, its loneliness, its age, its nature." "Yes, but that almost killed me." "But it worked. For a moment, you and the absence were connected. Actually connected, not just transmitting at each other." Marcus turned to his son. "We have been trying to tell it our story, but maybe first we need to listen to its story." The next attempt was different. Instead of projecting outward, the psychics focused on receiving. They opened their minds to the absence, trying to understand rather than to communicate. What they found was beyond anything they had expected. The absence began as a universe, not just a remnant or a survivor, but an entire cosmos in its own right. A reality that had existed for trillions of years, developing life and intelligence and civilization on scales that made the Galactic Federation look like a child's first drawing. And then it had ended, not through any natural process, but through something the absence itself did not fully understand. A failure, a catastrophe, a final moment when everything that was simply stopped being. The entity that now called itself the absence was the last consciousness of that dead universe. It had gathered the final remnants of matter and energy and preserved them, holding them together through the long darkness between realities. It had drifted for billions of years, alone in the void, until it finally found a new universe to enter. But entering this universe came at a cost. The energy required to breach the barrier between realities was immense. The absence had arrived starving, depleted, barely able to maintain its own existence. It had begun to feed not out of malice, but out of simple survival instinct. And it had been so lonely for so long that it had forgotten what it was like to encounter other minds, to communicate, to connect. The psychics shared this knowledge with Marcus and the assembled Federation Council. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Chancellor Vorn broke the silence. "So this entity destroyed our star systems because it was hungry and alone. This does not change the fact that it will consume our entire galaxy if it continues." "No," Marcus agreed, "but it changes how we approach the problem." He turned to the psychics. "You connected with it, you heard its story, now it is time to share ours." "What do you mean?" "I mean we do not just broadcast our music or our stories. We invite the absence to participate. We ask it to join us, to become part of our universe instead of consuming it." He paused. "We offer it something it has not had in billions of years: membership." The idea was audacious. It was absurd. It went against every principle of self-preservation that the Federation had ever developed. In other words, it was perfectly human. The preparation took another month. The psychics trained to maintain two-way connection with the absence. The storytellers prepared not individual works, but frameworks for collaboration. The musicians composed pieces with gaps, spaces where another voice could join. And when everything was ready, they reached out once more. This time, instead of telling the absence who they were, they asked it who it wanted to be. The response was overwhelming. For hours that felt like days, the cosmic entity poured itself into the connection. It shared memories of its lost universe. It expressed grief for civilizations dead longer than this galaxy had existed. It communicated loneliness so profound that several of the psychics wept uncontrollably. But it also asked questions. What was this new universe like? What were these strange, small consciousnesses that called themselves life? How did they endure, knowing they would one day end? And the humans answered. They shared stories of death and loss, of loved ones gone and worlds destroyed. They shared music born from sorrow and art created in defiance of mortality. They showed the absence that the beings of this universe understood endings, that they lived with the knowledge of their own impermanence every single day. And yet they continued. They loved. They created. They reached out to each other across the void of space, seeking connection even though they knew it could not last forever. The absence listened. And something changed. On the displays throughout the station, the monitors showed something that should have been impossible. The spread of the absence was slowing, then stopping, then, incredibly, revering. The cosmic entity was pulling back. Marcus Chen watched with tears streaming down his face as stars that had been swallowed began to reappear, not fully restored but stabilized, preserved. The absence was not retreating entirely. It was contracting to a sustainable size. And in the space it vacated, something new was forming. Bridges of energy, connections between the absence and the universe it had entered. Pathways that would allow the two realities to touch without consuming each other. The entity was learning to coexist. In the days that followed, the first true communication began. The absence, through the psychic network that humanity had helped establish, began to share its knowledge with the Federation, technologies from a dead universe, sciences that had never been imagined, perspectives on existence that challenged every assumption the younger species had ever made. In return, the absence asked for something simple: company, regular contact, the chance to know the beings whose universe it had almost destroyed. The Galactic Federation agreed. A permanent station was established at the edge of the now stable absence. Representatives from every species would rotate through, sharing their cultures and stories and music with the ancient consciousness. And humans, who had been called chaotic and reckless and barbaric, were honored as the species that had saved the galaxy not through weapons or technology, but through empathy. General Marcus Chen stood once more before the Supreme Council, but this time the atmosphere was different. There was no fear in the chamber, only gratitude. The Federation owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid, Chancellor Vorn said. You were asked to lead us through our darkest hour, and you did, but not through the methods we expected, not through war or aggression or the reckless abandon we had come to associate with your species. He paused. You saved us through compassion, through the simple act of reaching out to something different and trying to understand it. Marcus shook his head. We did not do anything that other species could not have done. We just did it first. And that, Vorn said, is precisely what makes humanity so valuable. You act while others hesitate. You try when others despair. You reach out when others withdraw. He rose from his seat, and one by one the other council members did the same. General Marcus Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Federation, I offer you and your species our eternal thanks. You asked for leadership during an existential crisis. What you gave us was something far more precious. What was that? Marcus asked. Hope, Vorn said simply. The hope that even the most impossible problems can be solved. The hope that understanding can triumph over fear. The hope that being separated by unimaginable distances, whether of space or time or nature itself, can find common ground. He spread his arms wide. That is the human gift to the galaxy. Not your recklessness, though we have certainly benefited from that. Not your stubbornness, though that has served you well. Your gift is the simple, profound belief that no matter how dark things become, there is always a way forward. Marcus thought of his children, Kira, who had bridged the gap between humanity and the Federation, Michael, who had made first contact with a being older than their universe. They had been afraid, both of them. They had faced impossible odds and uncertain outcomes. But they had tried anyway. That is just what we do, Marcus said. It is all we have ever done. Vorn smiled, an expression that looked strange on his ancient face but was unmistakably genuine. "Then perhaps, General, that is exactly what the galaxy needed. A species that refuses to give up. A species that looks at the impossible and says, 'But what if we tried anyway?'" He gestured toward the display, which now showed the stable boundary of the absence, surrounded by the energy bridges that connected it to the rest of the galaxy. "For 8,000 years, the Federation has avoided risks. We have built our civilization on caution and careful planning. And for 8,000 years, we have never faced a true existential threat." He paused. "Perhaps that was because we were lucky, or perhaps it was because we had become too careful to truly live." "Chancellor," Marcus asked, "you asked us to trust you, General, to trust human methods over our proven approaches. We did so out of desperation, but we should have done so out of wisdom. The galaxy needs caution, yes, planning, certainly, but it also needs courage. The willingness to try new approaches, to reach out to the unknown, to believe that solutions exist even when evidence suggests otherwise." Vorn turned to address the full council. "Therefore, I propose that the changes implemented during this crisis become permanent. Humanity will continue to hold a leadership position in the Federation, not as rulers but as advisors, as the voice that says, 'But what if we tried anyway?' when caution threatens to become paralysis." The vote was unanimous. 3 months later, Ambassador Kira Chen stood before the assembled representatives of 12,000 species. She had been chosen to deliver the speech that would mark the beginning of a new era for the galaxy. "The crisis is over," she said. "The absence has become an ally instead of a threat, but the lessons we learned during these difficult months should not be forgotten." She looked out at the vast assembly of alien faces. Humanity was asked to lead because we were seen as reckless, chaotic, willing to take risks that other species would not. And that was true. We did take risks. We sent my brother into the heart of cosmic darkness. We proposed solutions that seemed insane. We refused to accept that extinction was inevitable. But what we did was not uniquely human. Every species represented here has the capacity for courage. Every species can choose to reach out rather than withdraw, to try rather than surrender, to hope rather than despair. She paused, letting the words settle. "The only difference between humanity and the other species of the Federation is that we had not yet learned to be cautious. We were young, inexperienced, too naive to know that some problems cannot be solved." Kira smiled. "And sometimes naivety is exactly what is needed. Sometimes the wisdom of ages becomes a weight that prevents action. Sometimes the best thing you can do is ignore the voice that says, 'This is impossible,' and try anyway." She gestured toward the display that showed the absence, now a stable presence at the edge of the galaxy, connected to the Federation through energy bridges that pulsed with shared information. "That is our gift to you, not human leadership, not human recklessness. Simply the reminder that no matter how dark things become, there is always something that can be tried. There is always another approach. There is always hope. We are one galaxy now, one community, and together there is nothing we cannot face." The applause that followed shook the very foundations of the Federation headquarters. Representatives who had once looked down on humans as primitive upstarts cheered alongside those who had always believed in humanity's potential. And in the back of the chamber, General Marcus Chen stood beside his children, watching as his species took its place among the stars. Not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as partners, friends, and the eternal voice of stubborn hope. The galaxy would face other crises, other threats, other moments when extinction seemed certain. But now they knew something they had not known before. As long as there were beings willing to try anyway, to reach out anyway, to hope anyway, the light would never truly go out. And humanity would always be there to remind them of that simple, profound truth.